Welcome back to Pace Immigration, paceimmigration.com, talking with Immigration Director Vince Lalonde. Vince, good to see you.
You too, Sean.
So today we're talking about job offer, the best way to immigrate to Canada. We get a lot of email, or I should say you do, get a lot of email inquiring how to get into Canada and can I get a job and where do I look for a job? And we'll try and answer some of those questions today. There are various ways to do it. We can jump right in with the Express Entry Program, which is pretty much the program, except it's kind of on hold, isn't it?
Yeah. So really, like, I saying the job offer is the best way to immigrate to Canada. It might be the only way to immigrate to Canada for a lot of people right now. Obviously, if you're a refugee or you're married to a Canadian or you're in a common law relationship with a Canadian who can sponsor you, or you're a business person who would like to come here and do business, set up an enterprise here in Canada, then there are options for those people. But for everybody else, if you are outside of Canada, if you're not physically in Canada and you want to apply for permanent residence, you don't really have a lot of options right now. And this is the reason. The main pathway, the primary pathway for people who are outside of Canada and who would like to immigrate, skills-based immigration, is the skilled worker program. The program's been around forever, but it's been officially on pause since March 2020, so since the beginning of the pandemic. That means that if you create an Express Entry profile, you submit an expression of interest under the Express Entry program, you're not going to receive an invitation to apply if you're not physically in Canada, if you're not here on a job offer or a student. Okay, so that really limits your options. So I don't know, maybe some people are listening to me thinking it's not that big of a deal because they can always wait for the program to reopen. I mean, the pandemic isn't going to go on forever. The skilled worker program is going to reopen eventually. But I just want to remind people here that even when the program does reopen, it's extremely competitive right now, because with this EOI system that we have, you're competing against everybody else who has also created an Express Entry profile in the system. So your profile needs to be almost perfect in order to get an invitation to apply from the federal government. So right now it's on pause, but even when it does reopen, it's super, super competitive. And it's very difficult to get that invitation to apply if you're not physically present in Canada, if you're living outside Canada.
Let's take a look at the Express Entry program for just a second for people that might not be well versed in it. Basically what happens is you go online and you look at the Express Entry and you have to create an Express Entry profile.
Yeah.
And you score certain points on things like how old you are, your education, and that kind of thing, right? And so what you're saying with the expression of interest system, creating steep competition, there's going to be a lot of people on there with a lot of points.
That's right. Yeah. So, I mean, think about the back. They haven't been taking anybody under this program for almost 2 years now, or, actually 2 years. So there's going to be a huge pool of people, very talented people with, who are checking all the right boxes, who are going to be submitting profiles under the Express Entry program. And in order to get invited to apply, you have to be one of the best. So you have to have higher points than anybody else who's also submitted an expression of interest profile. So age, education, language ability, work experience, everything, you need to get almost max points in order to qualify under the skilled worker program if you're submitting your name into the Express Entry pool. So like I said, it's on pause right now, but even when it does reopen, it's going to be really tough. So what's the solution? Well, the solution is to get your foot in the door, find a way to get into Canada first, because, everybody's been hearing on the news that Canada, maybe some people listening are surprised because they heard that last year, Canada accepted a record number of new permanent residents, I think over 400,000. So where are these people coming from if they're not coming from outside of Canada? Well, the answer is they're coming from inside Canada. A lot of them are physically present in Canada. They're either working or they're studying in Canada. Those people are still getting invitations to apply.
Yeah, that was a bit of a hedge, wasn't it? I mean, the average person reading that 400,000 newcomers were accepted for permanent residency in Canada would make, that average person think, oh, there must have been 400,000 people that came over, but that's not the case. Basically, because of the pandemic rules, with the borders closed and everything, they just found the people that were already here, whether they were students or already working here as temporary workers, and then just made them permanent. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. So, lots of invitations to apply still going out under the express entries, under the express entry program, but those were being sent out to people who were already here on the ground in Canada.
Okay, so let's take a look at those people then, the workers and the students, the people that were already here. You're saying the solution is to get into Canada as a worker or student. So maybe that almost sounds kind of problematic with the fact that the express entry system is closed right now. So how can workers get in if it's not through express entry?
Yeah, so there's a couple of, first of all, I'll just say a couple words about coming over as a student. Okay. Coming over as a student can be great if it fits in with your career trajectory. So if studying or furthering your education makes sense to you from a career standpoint, then it could be a good option. We have great schools in Canada, obviously, but it doesn't really fit in for everybody. A lot of people already have their career path kind of well established. They don't need to go back to school. And studying in Canada is great, but it's also a huge financial commitment because, first of all, you're paying international student fees. Also, you have to, pay your expenses while you're in Canada. And as you and I know, Sean, the cost of living in Canada right now is really high, especially in cities like Toronto or Vancouver, where a lot of the good schools are. So, unless it's a good fit for you career-wise and you have the financial resources, it's a lot easier to come here and work. Okay, if you can find a job in Canada, come here, you hit the ground running when you arrive, then that's going to be a better solution for a lot of people. But like you said, it's not just a question of getting a job and coming over. Okay, there's some loopholes that you need to go through. Okay, if you get a job in Canada, you have a couple of options. First of all, for most people who get a job in Canada, they're going to be coming over on a work permit first. Okay, but not everybody. Okay, some people, maybe depending on where usually it's a geographic question. Okay, if your job is in a certain area, you might be able to apply for permanent residence directly. And that's really the dream. You get a job, you come over to Canada, you're a permanent resident, and you have full-time employment when you arrive in Canada. That's really the best case scenario. But like I said, even if you're coming over on a work permit, it's still pretty good. It's going to open a lot of doors for you if you're interested in Canadian permanent residence.
Okay, I think we can kind of maybe skip over this slide here, the work permit and the direct permanent residency, because the next one will kind of start getting into answering the question that will be on a lot of people's minds, which is, how do I get the job? Like, how do I get the offer and things like that? And what comes into play is you start getting into, well, I guess we can cover the direct permanent residency programs, but I want to get down the road in a little bit, and we're going to talk about that LMIA, which tends to trip people up a little. But for direct permanent residency, there are some programs that can get people right in here off the bat. Let's go through some of them.
Yeah, I'll just talk about the direct permanent residency first, because there, like I said, there are some programs that will allow you to obtain permanent residence or apply for permanent residence directly as soon as you have that valid job offer. Okay, for example, the Rural and Northern Immigration Pilot Program, the Atlantic Immigration Program. It used to be Atlantic Immigration Pilot Program. It's no longer a pilot program. It's been turned into a permanent program. Other provincial nominee programs, Saskatchewan, whatever. Okay, so depending on where the job is, if you have a valid job offer, you might be able to apply for permanent residence directly, which is great. But like I said, it's not always the case. And the job offer can't just be a job offer from your friend who owns a restaurant in Scarborough or whatever. Okay, it has to be a valid job offer. Okay, and usually what we mean by when we say valid job offer is it needs to be backed by an LMIA, as you mentioned. What is an LMIA? LMIA is a labor market impact assessment. So this is something that your employer applies for. They need to prove basically that they couldn't find anybody here in Canada to fill this job vacancy at their company. So they need to bring in somebody from overseas. Okay, so most jobs require an LMIA. That's something that we can help with as well. Okay, but not every job. Okay, some jobs don't require LMIA, famously tech jobs. Okay, if you have a job as a computer programmer or a computer engineer here in Canada, Depending on the job itself, you may not need to get that LMIA. In which case you can come over a lot faster. You can get here a lot faster. Okay, but even if you need to get the LMIA, we can still help with that. Once you're here, you have the LMIA. You apply for the work permit. You come in on a work permit. Then that's still going to create options for you when you're applying for permanent residence.
Right. And if you're on the podcast, you can flip on over to the YouTube channel to see the slides that we're putting up with these points on them. Let's get into that labor market impact assessment just a little bit. Just kind of fill it in for people that how long that process takes. So let's say they get a job offer from someone, and then they say, yes, I'd love that job. Has that person already put the LMIA into process, or does it start after they want to give someone a job, or how does it work?
Yeah, technically, there's two separate applications. There's the employer's application for a labor market impact assessment. That's going to take, a few weeks to process at the very least. Sometimes the employer has somebody specific in mind when they submit that LMIA. Sometimes they don't. So really it depends if the employee and the employer already know that, they're a good match for each other before the LMIA process starts. Then, yeah, it's definitely for the employer, it's going to be slower than if they were hiring somebody in Canada. But, there are gaps in the Canadian labor market that, employers, there are positions that just can't be filled. And, so what you're seeing now is you're seeing more and more companies who are catering to those employers and employees. Like, obviously in Canada, we've had, job search websites here for years and years. There are dozens of different, websites for people who are looking for jobs. But we haven't really had a lot of websites devoted specifically to foreign workers, but you're starting to see a little bit of a shift, and there are more and more of those types of job search tools available online. Just for example, PGA has a page that allows you to apply for some jobs online. So depending on what your background is, you may be able to apply for a job directly through one of those services as well. So, there are more and more options out there for people who are looking for jobs in Canada. And, I think that it's really a demand on both sides. It's a demand from the employees who want to come into Canada and get a job here, obviously, because like I said, their options for applying for PR directly without a job offer in Canada are limited. And there's also a demand on the employer side, because really there are some major gaps in the labor market here in Canada. There are a lot of employers who can't find the workers that they need here in Canada. So they're starting to look more and more at workers who are overseas and trying to bring those people over and fill those gaps.
Right. And that website that you mentioned, PaceGlobalAdvantage.com, a sister organization with Pace that will have some job information on there for people if they want to go over there and take a look at that. Just to cap things off, what's your final analysis of this? We're sitting there with a big backlog of people trying to get in the country, express entry still on pause. If you were giving someone some dead honest advice about the best way to do it, it sounded like maybe the direct permanent residency route or one of the provincial nominee programs. What do you think?
Yeah, I would say that if you can find a job in Canada, if you can go to one of these sites and find an employer who really wants to bring you over, you feel that, the employer is confident that they can't find anybody here in Canada and they're committed to bringing you in to fill that role. That's going to be the first step, trying to find that job. Once you have that job, then depending on where it is, you might be able to apply for direct PR, but it doesn't really matter. Okay, if you want to come over on a work permit, if your only option is to come over on a work permit first, it's fine. Just come over on the work permit. Work permits are great. Okay, your spouse or common law partner will also be able to apply for an open work permit, so they can come join you here in Canada potentially. If you have dependent children, they'll also be able to apply for study permits. So, a work permit is a great way to get your foot in the door. And once you're here, then that's going to open up all kinds of doors for you for applying for permanent residence eventually. So it doesn't really matter whether it's direct PR application, work permit first, and then PR. The point is just to get on the ground here in Canada, start working, establish yourself, And then, the government really favors those people who already have proven to the government that they're able to take care of themselves and, stay employed and be, contributing members of society, basically, when they're submitting their PR application.
Yeah, I mean, the immigration minister himself came out and said that that whole thing of turning temps into permanents is going to become a feature of the immigration, the way Canada does immigration going forward. So if you can get on the ground early, even as a temporary, there's a good chance that could turn into permanent residency. So
definitely.
All right, Vince, thanks for that. If people want to contact you, of course, it's vlalonde@pacelawfirm.com. And also, I guess we should mention you can help out employers too with the LMIA stuff, eh?
That's right. Yeah. So this video is not just for the employees. I mean, those are the people who are usually contacting us, people who are outside of Canada who want to come in. Right. But obviously, we work with a lot of employers. We like to find ways to avoid the LMIA process. So there are a lot of exceptions. There are a lot of types of jobs that don't require LMIA. We're pretty good at finding a way to avoid that LMIA process so that you can bring your workers over more quickly without having to go through the whole LMIA procedure. No guarantees, but we can do our best to help employers in that regard as well.
Excellent. Okay, Vince, we'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.
Sounds good, Sean. Thanks.